Hello there. Welcome to Just the Dis. My name is Brian. We normally talk about Blu-rays here, but I like to talk about DVDs on occasion, and that's sort of the subject of this new series. These will be shorter videos, and I will just talk, at as length as I can about some films, and I brought this up in collection updates and such, occasionally squeaking them in at the end. Movies that are on DVD, but that don't currently have a Blu-ray release. Very simply calling this series Not on Blu-ray. And there's a lot of great stuff to discuss. So, as I said, normally we're all about Blu-rays. In this case, we're about anticipating Blu-rays and hoping that Blu-rays happen at some point for these films, because a lot of them are really, really great stuff. I'm sure you have a film that you love that is only available on DVD. And in fact, I would encourage you and be delighted if you would list in the comments below any films that you have on DVD that don't have a Blu-ray yet that you would love to see get a Blu-ray release. So for my maiden voyage with this series, I'm going to talk about a film that I discussed on an episode of Pure Cinema podcast, my show that I do with my friend Caine. And in this case, the episode we did also had an incredibly wonderful guest in Quentin Tarantino, and the episode was all about final films. It was all about directors' last films, and we were highlighting some that we thought were interesting or were favorites. And one of the films I highlighted during that episode was SLEUTH. And this is Joseph L. Mankiewicz's last film from 1972. As you can see, it stars Michael Caine and Laurence Olivier. This is the Anchor Bay DVD, one of several they issued, which in researching the movie for the show, I found actually there were a bunch of, a few different issues with this. Not issues, but in terms of how many times it was put out. Now, this disc was the best one that I found, and it includes an interview with Anthony Schaefer, whose play the film is based on. And it's 23 minutes, and it's great. But there were some versions of this Anchor Bay DVD that did not have that. And I feel like I could be wrong about this, but this one is widescreen enhanced, meaning it is meant it doesn't go to the square box as some DVDs do if they're not enhanced for a widescreen TV when they came out. I feel like there might have been an early version of SLEUTH that wasn't, but don't quote me on that. But this one is definitely 16:9 enhanced, and it looks pretty good. The other thing about this is it is a dual-layered disc, because this film is 138 minutes, so it's over 2 hours. And if you remember, back in the days of DVD, if a film was that long, it usually had to be a flipper, meaning you had part of the film on one side and another part on the other side. So there were versions of this Anchor Bay DVD that had the flipper element. So I like that this is a dual-layered disc. It's all on one side. You don't have to flip it over. And this is just a really, really fantastic movie with two powerhouse actors, just really challenging each other and doing some incredible work. So it's directed by, as I said, Joseph L. Mankiewicz, and he was a screenwriter for a long time in Hollywood. He did a lot of stuff in terms of writing in the 30s and 40s. He would then come to direct in 1946. He did a film called Dragonwyck, which came out, I want to say that came out from both Twilight Time and Indicator, if I'm recalling correctly. That has Gene Tierney and Vincent Price. He also did stuff like The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, Letter to Three Wives, but the big one that everybody knows him for is All About Eve, which has a wonderful Criterion Blu-ray. Came out in 1950. Incredible Bette Davis performance, incredible dialogue. That was the one that really got people's attention. And I think the other thing people don't remember, or at least I didn't, was that he was also the guy who did Cleopatra. So 11 years later in 1961, so he did, he did All About Eve for Fox, and Cleopatra is also a Fox movie, but it starred Liz Taylor. It was supposed to be directed by Ruben Mamelian, and Mankiewicz was hired to replace him, and he accepted like a lot of money to do it, and he really came to regret it because the film took up like 2 years of his life, and it ended up derailing both his career and adding severe financial losses to the studio. That's known as still one of the great flops in Hollywood history. So I forgot about that. And so he did do some things, I think, after Cleopatra, but I love that he sort of bounced back and did what I think is one of the best films. I would put this film up there with All About Eve in terms of just quality. And in terms of the plot, it's pretty neat because I'm not a big fan of stage play adaptations all the time because I feel like you can often feel it. They feel stagey, they feel like it depends on how the adaptation is done. But sometimes it feels like you're just a few steps removed from somebody putting a camera next to a stage and a set and just filming two people doing a play, which is great. Theater is an incredible art form, and I certainly respect it. But I've always found it interesting when a director can find a way to interestingly adapt a stage play. And I think this is a really interesting adaptation in terms of the way that it's filmed and the sets and things like that. The screenplay is by Anthony Schaefer himself. So he adapts his own work, which I'm sure helps in making a good movie. But the idea is basically that Laurence Olivier plays like a rich novelist, a writer. I want to say he writes. I think he writes murder mysteries, if I remember. And he has this really big house. We see him at the opening of the film. He's in this like maze where he's dictating to a tape recorder, and Michael Caine shows up, and we find out that he has arranged for Michael Caine's character to come to his house because he has found out that Michael Caine, who is like a lower middle class hairdresser, businessman, is having an affair with his wife, who he's actually kind of estranged from. So he's seemingly not that upset. And in fact, it's really interestingly played by Olivier because you're like, this is weird. Is he sincere in his offerings here, or his feelings about what he's doing, or is there something else going on? And that's, one of the things a great performer like Olivier can do. And so in this case, he says to the Michael Caine character, look, I found out about this thing, and in fact, it's a blessing for both of us. I'm perfectly happy to have you take my wife, off my hands. And I just have to let you know, though, she's become basically he says she's become accustomed to a high lifestyle, a lifestyle that will require probably more money than you can afford at this time. But I have a plan, and it will benefit both of us. And he says, I think you should rob my house. And he's also coming from the point of view of this mystery writer who's figured out everything, and his house is filled with all these games and macabre little, ancient weapon things like suits of armor and weird stuff. But he's obsessed with games and sort of the pieces of mysteries. And so he thinks he's figured out this perfect plan. He says, you can rob my house. My safe has this really expensive jewelry in it. And you can get away and keep that money. I will collect the insurance money. And so we both win. And of course, the Caine character is a little suspicious, but after a good deal of talking, he's sort of able to convince him, like, this is a good plan. And then things turn. And I'm not going to go any further with this because I feel like talking about the turn, it needs to be seen, is the bottom line. But that's really just kind of like the first act of the movie, you know? It's got a lot more to it. As I said, it's like 2 hours and 18 minutes long, and that may seem like a long movie, especially for just two actors. But again, they're two of the great actors of all time, and Anthony Schafer's play and dialogue are fantastic. Anthony Schafer, by the way, I believe the writer of The Wicker Man as well, a pretty incredible movie. I'd be interested to watch Sleuth and The Wicker Man together. They don't really fit, but anyway. So it really plays out in a very interesting way. A lot of back and forth, and sort of like when you think one has the upper hand, maybe he doesn't. And it's just really, really well acted and played and written and directed. The house set is incredible. Yeah, I just absolutely love this movie. And I should note that I was a fan of it before, but I was sort of reinvigorated with it when Rian Johnson was doing his press for Knives Out, as he mentioned a handful of films that were influences on that film, including like Death Trap and Last of Sheila, which I highly recommend that. That's a fantastic mystery as well. There were a few others, but Sleuth was one of them. And I was like, oh, I need to go back to Sleuth. I really enjoy that film. And coming back to it, it just completely blew me away yet again and obsessed me. And that's why I picked it for that episode of Pure Cinema. And that's why I'm recommending it now. And I do hope that at some point, if there are rights issues, I don't know the specifics for this film, that some sort of Blu-ray release is sorted out. Hopefully I'm not inaccurate in saying there's no Blu-ray. And if there is, and someone wants to tell me about it, that would be wonderful. I would be greatly surprised and be so pleased. But as far as I know, there's no Blu-ray. And this DVD is actually, in my experience, pretty expensive. So a little tricky to see. And I don't think it's available streaming. So that's part of the reason to do this series, is to sort of let people know, hey, here's a movie you should seek out if you can on DVD. And, if we're lucky, maybe we'll get a nice Blu-ray of it some point down the line. But yeah, highly recommended from me. Sleuth, the beginning of my not on Blu-ray series. Let me know what you think of the idea, and I'll do these maybe a couple times a month if I can, and hopefully you enjoy it. And thank you for watching and or listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.